Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we are going to do some quick first impressions of the new Anbernic RG476H. That is this device right here. Now you might be wondering, why am I doing a quick first impressions? Well, I just don't have the time to do an actual full review on this right now, but I also didn't want it to go lost in the wayside because this is actually pretty cool. I actually like it quite a bit. And so I wanted to just do a very quick video so that I can at least get my thoughts out really quickly on this until I can finally do a review, which may or may not matter by the time I actually get to a review. So today we'll do a quick look, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more normal of a video, kind of a one take. I'm just going to sit here, play with it, and talk about it in a mock style review format, and we'll get over it. Now, just quickly, what makes this so special compared to previous Anbernics that I have not reviewed and skipped because they frankly weren't that great? You've probably seen me with the Anbernic RG slide. I didn't even bother with anything with it. It was bad. The Anbernic RG477H, 477M, I guess it's called. The metal version of this device, which funny enough has some negatives compared to this device, that has a better processor. And it is also $130 more expensive at $280. This right here is retailing for $155 US right now. Still a little bit pricier than I would have expected or wanted at this point. There is a T820 processor inside of here, which is the same as the Anbernic RG556, the RG406V, RG406H, all of the previous Anbernics. What that does mean is that the limit for this device, if you were asking me, I would personally only play up to Nintendo 64 and PSP. That's where I would end. So Nintendo 64, PSP, Dreamcast. However, you can do some light GameCube, some light PlayStation 2, all of that if you want to. But in a lot of those scenarios, you do need a lot of hacks. You do need to go into the settings, change some settings, a bunch of stuff. Usually when you ask somebody, can you play PS2 or GameCube on here? Their answer is yes, and then they send you a 20 list item things of things to change. For me, I like to just jump into a game. If a game doesn't work, I don't play it on that device. That's how I play. So for everything else though, the big thing here is there is actually 120 Hertz for the display. That makes everything super smooth. Now, a lot of people are not unfamiliar with 120 Hertz at this point, but this is currently the cheapest 120 Hertz display that you can get in a handheld like this. And it is also a 4x3 display, which means that if we were to jump into some 4x3 systems, it looks awesome. And so, as promised, here is 4x3 Super Mario World using up the entire screen. There's no stretching, no none of that. And it's at 120 Hertz. And yeah, awesome. This is why I personally like this device, is because it is the right price point. It is not $280 like the RG477M is. It is $155, still a bit more expensive. I think $130 is a bit of a better price nowadays, but you have a 4x3, 4.7 inch, 120 Hertz, 1280 by 960 display, which is just absolutely gorgeous. Now, I want to compare this, just quickly, size-wise at least, to my Anbernic RG405M. Now, I don't have anything on this right now, so I don't have any games loaded, so I can't really put anything on screen, but this is a bit of a bigger brother to this. I still want something smaller than this, or than this, at least with the RG405M. But this is kind of the natural step up. It's just we are getting bigger in sizes for these devices. I don't know why we are doing that. Why can't we get back to the slim, nice, old style devices? Now, there are some key differences between the two that I found were actually really interesting. For example, the D-pad on both are fairly similar. This is actually a little bit more tough to push down. This is looser. I like loose. This is great. Sticks are an obvious huge improvement here. Much better sticks on the, what is this thing called? 476H compared to the RG405M, which is using the old Switch style sticks. The layout of the buttons, still the same. I never liked them here. I still don't like them here. Select and start should not be on one side. They should be separated on both sides. But the bigger difference for me is actually the buttons. Now, at some point, Anbernic changed their buttons. In previous devices, like the RG405M and that whole series of devices, They are very easy to push down. There's not a lot of resistance. It's still a lot of feedback. There's still a lot of travel, but they're easier to push down. I don't have to put a lot of effort in to pushing these down. However, the 476H, it's like it's popping or springing back up constantly to the point where I actually get fatigued playing this. And I don't know why that is. I noticed this first on the RG406V, the big vertical, and then they continued it. Whereas previous years of Anbernic have nice soft buttons compared to harder to push down and springier buttons. It's a big negative to me, unfortunately, but it's something that I think if it was my only device, I would get used to over time and probably get some strong thumbs over it. Now, one of the big benefits to the RG476H that the 477M doesn't have is, or is 476M. What is that model? I'm not going to look it up. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's the metal version of this. This is the plastic version. But anyways, this has analog triggers, which the $100 more model does not actually have, which is absolutely crazy. But anyways, I prefer analog triggers in every scenario. So this is what I like. Even if I don't use them in a lot of games, this is exactly what I want. And it is still a slim device by every metric. It is not big at all. It is still fairly slim, even compared to something like the 405M. Like, this is still slim. The triggers still stick out, but I'm not hating this. I don't mind it. And it is actually pretty comfortable to use. This is a nice ergonomic style. That being said, for D-pad usage, it is absolutely a nice ergonomic style. So if I jump into something like Super Mario World right now, and I'm just gonna fly around in here, hold on. We'll try and get into some different positions. But it's comfortable. D-pad top, great, works for this. I would not use this for, I'm dead. I would not use this for stick games. That is where my trouble happens. D-pad games, I'm enjoying it. It's been pretty fun. If I jump into non-D-pad games though, and I don't have any hotkeys set up, but now here, if I jump into a non-D-pad game like Super Mario World or Super Mario 64, this is where things get a little bit hazy for me. It's the same as the Retro Pocket 5. It's the exact same issue. When you have to use the triggers and you have to use sticks down here, you're flaring out your hands like this, and I could get used to this. It's fine. It's actually better than the Retro Pocket 5 from what I remember. But if I have to do the long jump with Mario, I hate myself. It's not, this is where the stick top comes into play. That's why I prefer this layout more. I can still use this D-pad easily down here. I have trouble using the sticks down here. If this was swapped, we would have a whole different discussion about this device. But still, all that being said, I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of what they have happening here. The sticks are actually fantastic. The D-pad is actually really good. The buttons, I'm not a big fan of the buttons, but everything is coming together in a good package that, again, this is a very unique device. I saw the RG Slide. RG Slide has the same screen, but it's super uncomfortable. I'm not interested in it. It was one of the worst devices I've ever held. Then the Anbernic RG477M or whatever it is called popped out. And it was metal, but it was also it was as expensive as a Conquer Pocket Fit, as expensive as an AYN Thor, as expensive as an AYN Odin 3 that is still coming. So no, I'm sorry, Anbernic, with all of your negatives that has to do with your handhelds, I am not spending that amount of money on an Anbernic. Just not happening. So then when this came out at I forget what I paid. I paid $160 or something, 160 US. This is exactly the price point where this should be at. 130, 140, 150, 160, if you can get it around there, good. That's where I like this. And this will just become your 4x3 system for everything 4x3, as we are playing Mario 64 right now, but really anything to do with 4x3. So for instance, if I jump into PlayStation 1, you're not going to have any issues with PlayStation 1 here. Obviously, you can upscale it, you can do whatever you want. There's not a ton of power, but there is more than enough for PlayStation 1 and upscaled because you can do that on a potato. But again, 4x3 system, could there be a better place to play this than on this device? I don't think so. 4x3, 120 hertz? Unless you want to go with a 16:9 screen like an Odin 2 Portal. What am I doing here? it's a good experience for this. This is why I like these types of devices when they are custom made for the purpose. Yes, you could spend $100 more and suddenly you can play GameCube and PS2 with the RG477M, but I would rather play those on better devices that have a better compatibility list than what this can do. That's where I kind of differ from a lot of the reviews on that, is because I'm not spending $280 on an Anbernic. However, happy to spend $140 in an Anbernic that does most of what that does. And that's what this is. So I'm enjoying this for 4x3 systems. I think it's great for that. That's why I would push this down. Everything N64, Dreamcast, PSP under. PSP is not 4x3, but you know what I mean. Now, while my Burnout Revenge is loading up so we can look at some PlayStation 2, spec-wise, this does of course have Wi-Fi. It has Bluetooth. Does not have video out because the T820 does not have video out. So you cannot do any video out with this, unfortunately. But otherwise, you have speakers right at the bottom. You have your micro SD card slot right here, USB-C charging port, headphone jack, and we have at the top our power, volume buttons, all the other usual fixings. This does have a fan. I have it on auto, but I haven't really heard it yet. Let's see if we hear it in PlayStation 2. So unfortunately, because I cannot transfer my saves over from PlayStation 2 and GameCube and so on, I have to just load up a game and start from the beginning. One of the negatives for Anbernic Android handhelds is you don't have access to the Android data storage. That means, for anybody familiar with a Retroid or AYN device or some others, where you can access those storages and transfer saves, all of that, you don't have that here. You can, of course, do it with RetroArch and other emulators that let you move that storage, but PlayStation 2, GameCube, you can't do it here. And so I have to start from the beginning. It's very annoying. And so here, if we look at Burnout Revenge, I just booted it up. You can see it is not running well. It's red at the top. We're not doing good at the moment. This is the default settings. I just booted it up and loaded it how I would normally play on the device that I use. And so this, obviously, not a good experience. So let's see if we can optimize it a little bit. Now this is with the fast settings enabled. We are basically making a PS2 game look like a PlayStation 1 game by doing that. And you can see it's running better. Is it playable? I wouldn't play it like this. There are a lot of people that would, and that's perfectly fine. But this is, look, when it comes to emulation, I don't want to play things worse than they played on the original systems. That is this experience at the moment. You're playing it worse. There's a lot of hacks going on to get this to this playable frame rate. And sure, this is fine at 1x resolution. It's fine. Is it something that I want to do? Absolutely not. So I wouldn't consider PS2 or most PS2, the games that you guys want to play, as playable. However, you could play a lot of JRPGs and a lot of lighter games. It's up to you. But as you can tell from Burnout Revenge, the harder to run games, not going to be great here. Now, GameCube, bit different. GameCube can run well, mostly. You can see there's some slowdown there, but a lot of the games are a little bit easier to run than their PlayStation 2 counterparts. It just has to do with the emulator. The emulator is a lot further ahead than we have on Android with PlayStation 2. And so there are a lot of games like Mario Tennis, Double Dash, Animal Crossing, games like that you could play very well. Now, I can tell you, Wind Waker in the later stages, a little bit hard to run. Twilight Princess, later stages, pretty much impossible to run. So there are varying levels of success when it comes to GameCube games running on the T820 like this. And it's just going to depend on what types of games you want to run. You can have some really good experiences here. Like I could play this all day long. Mario Tennis runs really well. But there are going to be games like F-Zero that just don't run well. And so do you want to put yourself through that torture when you could just play a Nintendo 64 game or a Dreamcast game or something else that runs well instead of forcing yourself into games that do not run well? And so this is where I kind of live. Playing some Dreamcast, playing some Nintendo 64, any of the 4x3 systems, this is perfect. This is exactly what you want to use it for. And I don't think there's a better system at this price point that could do all of this. At 120 hertz, that is the big point here. 120 hertz helps with a lot. You might be thinking, well, 120 hertz is nothing, right? Like it's, what games use 120 hertz? But that's not the right way to look at it. The right way to look at it is when you use an Android device, there are inherent latency and input lag that you have to deal with. 120 hertz basically halves that. where you have now a device that feels more like a Linux device. And in a lot of cases, I haven't done any measurements on this, but in a lot of cases, this could outperform a Linux device when it comes to input lag and response time. So that is the exciting part about this, is 120 hertz helps with all of that. It doesn't matter about games running it. It matters with, can you use it to have your input latency? Can you use it for better response time? And the answer is yes. That's the best part about this. And so again, I don't have a lot of time to spend on this device as much as I want to, as much as I really like this. I had to do a very quick look on it, just to give you an idea of what my thoughts overall are on it, and just my perspective when I look at this device. Now I'm looking at the price right now, $155 US, plus I think it's $20 in shipping to go to US at least. I don't know about other parts of the world. For me, it was a little bit less than that. 175 might be pushing it for this device. I think if you can find it on sale in that 130, 140, maybe 150 shipped range, this would be a very good purchase to me. This feels like the natural upgrade of where we are going with 4x3 displays. And I think this is the end of it. I think this should be the right size. This should be the right screen. Maybe if you want to add a bit more power and keep it at this price point in the future, but this is where the end is. $150 or so makes sense to me for a 4x3 device. $200, $300, that's where it stops making sense, because you have things like other devices that are 16:9 that, sure, they have black bars, but they have a bigger screen. They have more to work with. They have better performance, better features, better everything. We're just not going to get that in a 4x3 device. So for me, when it comes to that, this right now is the best you can get at $155 or so. I would easily recommend this, but like I said, if you can get it shipped for between 130 to 150. I don't know if I would recommend it right now at $175 US. It's a bit too much, in my opinion. Retroid Pocket Mini version 2 is only a few bucks more. It's not 120 hertz, but it's a lot better than this is. So yeah, I think in the future, for anybody following and finding this video in the future, if you come here and you find this on sale, then yes, I can recommend this. This seems really cool. I wish I could do a full review on it and go through all of everything, but this is all you get right now at the moment because of time. So let me know in the comments what you think about the RG476H. I am wondering if this will develop a community after the fact, or maybe not. We are still waiting on Gamma OS to come to this, which should help with a lot of different things, including being able to access that Android data storage, something that Gamma does. But I'm wondering if this does get any sort of community. The problem with Anbernic is that it is so hard nowadays to develop a community for these devices, because look at what happened. You had the RG Slide, you had the RG477M, you have the RG476H, all of them using the same screen, the Slide and this using the same processor, but how do you build a community around one single device when you just released 3 devices that compete with each other? It's not very easy. But also, on top of that, if I even get to a chance to do this review, is there going to be an RG477H that comes out in that time? Is something else going to come out in the next month that completely erases this? That is another problem with Anbernic. With AYN and Retroid and others, I can buy a device that comes out every December, and I know that I'm good until that next December before it gets replaced. With Anbernic, could be 3 weeks, could be 2 weeks until I know this gets replaced. So it's also another reason why I don't do a lot of Anbernic reviews lately. It's because what's the actual point? It's just going to get replaced in a month. But if you want to know what's good this month, I think this is pretty good. That is my overall thoughts at the moment. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about retro handhelds and retro gaming. Support me through YouTube membership if you like my stuff, and hope you all have a good one.